This man actually cut off his scrotum to suppress his biological urges. The doctor immediately stopped the bleeding, but accidentally detected estrogen in the man's blood. Is he trying to become a woman? After talking to him, the man confessed the truth. Somehow he had a very strong need for sex. All he could think about was sex. Sometimes he can't even control his behavior. This makes his life miserable. The reason for taking estrogen, it's to suppress his urges so that he doesn't hurt others. He now lives with his sister for her safety. That's why he cut himself. The doctor said he was lucky his testicles weren't hurt. When the man heard that, he asked the doctors to remove them. So the doctors held a meeting to discuss the matter. The female doctor suspects that the man has a mental illness. He can no longer control his behavior. She suggests castration to prevent him from committing crimes. But it would have to be an irreversible operation to prevent him from committing a crime. That's ridiculous. So the surgeon denied the operation. The man was furious when he found out. So he refused treatment and painkillers. This put the surgeon in a difficult position. It wasn't long before the man fainted from the pain. The doctors had no choice but to operate, but the man then developed sepsis. This was caused by low testosterone due to his long-term consumption of estrogen. If the testicles are cut off now, then the man will never wake up. When the man learns of the situation, he was disillusioned and disappointed. Then he ran out of the hospital when the doctors weren't there. The doctors found him and chased him to the hospital entrance. They saw the man standing on the side of the road. Then he ended his life calmly in the traffic. The doctor just lightly touched the patient's toe. The patient was lying in bed, eating a burger. He said dieting didn't work, and his toe hurt. The doctor asked if he had been taking insulin. He said he didn't want to hear her lecture. The doctor who dealt with the toe quickly explained it had fallen off on its own. Luckily, the attending doctor arrived and said the whole foot needed to be amputated. The patient finally relaxed. Thankfully, the surgery went well. The doctor visited him, bringing a box of pizza. But he said he didn't like pineapple. Then the doctor was about to leave.
You leave with that pizza, I'll put one of your feet in a jar.
It seems as long as people stay optimistic, their appetite stays strong. This man's abdomen was severely lacerated. He pulls at the wound with his hand, muttering that he could feel it inside him. The doctor examined the wound and found it was cut flat and precisely and even sterilized, and the man's hands had disinfectant on them. That means he cut himself open. He told Dr. Charles that he wasn't crazy. He was just trying to get something out of his body. Then Charles gave him a strong sedative to stabilize him. They think the man was suffering from physical paranoia, but he was able to choose a location near a hospital and then cut into his own abdomen with pre-sanitized precision. That's clearly not consistent with a psychotic episode. So they tried to screen him for toxins, but the results showed he wasn't high. And when they examined the man again underneath the covers, the man reached into his wound. He screamed that he needed to get that thing out, and then he pulled out his intestines. The doctor stopped him and took him to surgery. But the results of the operation surprised Dr. Charles. Turns out that there is something inside the man's body. Doctors confirmed that it was not a tumor, but a fetus. That means it's the man's twin brother. But how did the man know that there was a fetus inside his body? And how did he pinpoint it and operate on himself? This woman said she'd been having headaches, but it's moving around and she had a nosebleed. But when she wiped it up, it actually retracts back into her nose. So the doctor examined her nasal passages. It seems there's a little creature living in her nose. She almost went crazy when she heard the doctor say that. So the doctor tried to force it out by smoking it. But the woman was so nervous, she kept talking. The doctor couldn't help himself.
Just stop talking.
And then the creature finally came out. The doctor grabbed it and pulled it out.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry.
For the rest of her life, she wouldn't let the doctor play with her nose. But the doctor said that the nose was warm and moist and comfortable and it's a tasty treat for it too. But the brain inside was even more appealing. It's like Christmas dinner for him.
He's here. He's right here. Get him out.
At last, the little creature was pulled out. It turns out to be a leech.
Who are you, little bugger? Oh my god.
This man has had abdominal pain for 10 years, but he never went to see a doctor. This time, he couldn't stand the pain and finally came to the hospital when they gave him a CT scan. They were ecstatic. It was like a miracle. They decided to give Dr. Weber a birthday surprise. And when Dr. Weber looked at the CT results calmly, he wasn't either. It turns out the man's abdominal pain was due to a mass inside. Zooming in on the CT, they saw that it was a fetus. It's called a fetus within a fetus, while in the womb. The man's twin brother was absorbed by him, leaving a complete set of bones inside his body. But the man realized the truth and suddenly reversed his decision. He didn't want to do the operation. Dr. Weber was about to lose his birthday present. He had to tell the man he'd give him back the fetus he'd removed. The man agreed to do it after some thought. After all, he could have his brother as a collector's item. On the day of the operation, all the doctors came to watch the spectacle. Maybe they've never seen a case like this in their entire careers. And then the operation was done. Dr. Weber came to the hospital room to return the man's brother.
Oh my god! Take that away!
Dr. House is diagnosing the plump lady. She says her heart feels like it's burning every night. He thinks she should have a prenatal checkup, and the woman says she's had 6 children. She knows if she's pregnant, she's just plump. But Dr. House insisted on an ultrasound and biopsy. The results shocked her. She had a 30-pound tumor inside her. That's the highest they've ever recorded in a clinic. After hearing the tumor was benign, the woman refused surgery. She said the surgery would leave her with an ugly scar that would prevent her from wearing a bikini.
You wear a bikini now?
Yeah, you got a problem with that?
It's even plastic surgery for her because her husband likes her body. She doesn't want to change anything. The next day, the woman's husband found House. He was worried about his wife's health, so he wanted House to convince his wife to have the surgery. He didn't care if she was fat or thin or had scars, but House didn't want to do anything about it. He thought the tumor was benign, so it's up to the patient to remove it or not. But the man took out pictures of his 6 children. He said he didn't want to risk his wife's life.
Have her come back in.
The next day, he called the man's wife. Then Detective House said,
Love her green eyes and his baby blues.
and the woman and her husband both had brown eyes. So 3 or 4 of the 6 children were not fathered by her husband, given that other men prefer a fuller figure. Philosopher House said,
Men are pigs.
they will have sex with anyone and then House. This last sentence hit the woman's bottom line.
I'm sure there are websites full of men looking for married women with surgical scars. So have the surgery. Please.
A 1-year-old baby had a cold for a week. Instead of getting better, she's gotten worse. Manning checked her out and found she probably had whooping cough and she didn't have a full immune system yet, so it was hard to treat. But after antibiotics, the baby didn't get better. That's when the woman's sister came to see the baby. She said that her son had been in contact with her sister's daughter 2 weeks earlier. Dr. Manning asked if the boy had been vaccinated. She said her husband never believed in it, so their son hadn't received any vaccinations at all. Dr. Manning then approached her husband. She questioned why he hadn't immunized their son, and the man blithely said that he was protecting his son. He said that his son had been healthy.
These people think.
Yeah, I had to tell her.
If you notice, Doctor, our son.
This infuriated Dr. Manning.
That baby is suffering horribly. She could die.
She told the man to get his son out of here. He could get the virus at any time by being around other children.
Get your son out of here now.
Watching the baby in the emergency room. The woman went to her sister and explained the situation, and the sister was incredulous that the boy hadn't been vaccinated. She blew him off. Luckily, the baby's condition was relieved and he was able to survive. And for those who rely on their own imagination and not on scientific evidence, Dr. Manning said that calling them idiots would be an understatement.
Oh my god.
This man is a captain. He was dizzy before takeoff, so he had to go to the hospital for a checkup. His company suspects he's depressed. He said he only felt weak occasionally. He doesn't smoke, drink, or take any medication, but the co-pilot said he was often confused. So Dr. Charles decided to run a tox screen on him. The results showed that he wasn't on drugs either, but he was found to have anemia. He didn't think it was a big deal, and his wife arrived, so he insisted on leaving the hospital and going home. Since his psychiatric evaluation showed that he was normal, so the doctors couldn't stop him from being discharged while he was waiting to be processed. He suddenly vomited a lot of blood and fainted, so the doctors rushed to resuscitate him. They found that a stomach ulcer caused him to vomit blood. But what's worse is that he has chronic esophageal erosion and pneumonia in his lungs. They deduced that it's possible his wife was feeding him hydrocarbon-based foods, and he's been in an airplane hangar for a long time. He could have gotten used to the smell of gasoline. That's why he couldn't smell the toxic food. Suicide or attempted murder. Dr. Charles thinks there may be another possibility. After some questioning, the man finally told the truth. He was actually an omnivore because of the high-pressure work environment. He can't help but drink gasoline. That's why he vomited blood and was often delirious after the treatment. The man's wife stopped them with a shout. She said the doctors cost them everything. Dr. Charles had reported the man's condition. It's going to put men out of work.
Every time he gets on a plane, he puts his own life and the lives of all of his passengers at risk.
He can't stand the thought of putting other people's lives in danger.